and welcome to the latest video following the restoration of our 2-foot gauge Fowler narrow gauge locomotive. This is the cab roof. This is the front cab spectacle plate. It's been sliced in two through the centre of the windows, as you can see, to get it in the container when it came back from Australia. But what we're doing here is we're trying to remove any of the good material that we can reuse. In this case, the angle irons that are curved to create the corner supports for the roof. They're not in perfect condition, but once they're shot blasted and primed and painted, they'll look great, and it's ideal to use the original material wherever we can. It'll also save us a good deal of work bending angle iron. We're also saving the nuts and bolts whenever we can. These are rivet-headed bolts, and on the shaft of the rivet head there's a little spot of weld which locates in a little nick in the side of the hole that they go through and holds them firm in their orientation while you tighten up the nut. So we've saved as many of them as we can, although we are going to have to make some more. And similarly here, although the actual running boards themselves are all scrapped, some of the angle supports from the sides can be rescued. So this is Dave chopping the good bits out. This is the beading that we've removed from the cab. The plate was scrapped, but we've removed the beading. And interestingly, when we've started to clean it back, you can see some of the original paint layers from the different colours the loco's been. In the same tray is the bracket for the sandbox that goes on the top of the boiler. You saw us remove these in the previous boiler video, and they're sitting here awaiting shot blasting before they can be refitted to the boiler. You'll remember that we chopped the smoke box off in a previous video. It's well beyond sensible repair, the material's shot, and it's a sacrificial part on a locomotive anyway. So we've rescued the cast ring from the front, but the rest is seen here being rolled away to the scrap pile with Dave. Looking now at the suspension, here you can see the equalising beam between the two spring hangers. It pivots backwards and forwards to transmit the load from the springs from one driving wheel set to the other. It's still here with the spring hanger attached, and the pin that you can see on both sides from all of the spring hangers is well worn. It's got the full weight of the locomotive on it, and you can see over the years at the mill it's been worn away. We're just going to make new ones of those. There's no way we can rescue that, really, or no way we would sensibly rescue it anyway. This is the centre pivot point, and it's got a cast iron bearing in it that's shattered at some point. We'll press that out and put a brand new one in there as well. And you can see it's stamped number 5, which is Tully Sugar Mills number 5, which is our locomotive. Interestingly, several of the parts that we've brought off have been stamped with other numbers from the other locomotives, number 4 and number 2 so far. This is because during its time at the sugar mill, parts will have been just interchanged while several locomotives were in for repair. What you're seeing here is the front cylinder cover that holds the insulation over the front cylinder cover itself. It was all bent out of shape, so we're heating it up, forging it effectively, and then beating it into a round shape again. I think once this is back into a pretty much round shape, we'll probably get it on the lathe and we'll skim it up just to make it finish nicely and properly smooth. Moving on now to the valves. This is a bit of an eclectic video trying to fit all sorts of different things that we've been doing over the past few months in. This is the slide valve from our original Fowler cylinder. You may remember that we had a Fowler cylinder on one side and a replacement Bundaberg cylinder on the other side from a preserved locomotive currently over in Australia. That's where the valve sits, you can see on the drawing. It's in remarkably good condition. This is the shuttle that holds it in place and slides it backwards and forwards from the valve rod. After it's been shot blasted, this is what it looks like. This is the valve itself, all cleaned up. We still need to skim and hone the actual valve face, which you just saw. There is a spring steel clip. This is the original, just cleaned up. A little bit of rust and wear on it, but still perfectly serviceable. And then this is the bobbin that you saw earlier, the shuttle if you like, all cleaned up. It's brass and it's cleaned up beautifully, and through the centre of that you can see there's a hole. That's where the valve rod goes through to push the valve backwards and forwards on the valve chest itself, in the valve chest itself. All cleaned up, can go on the shelf ready for fitting to the locomotive when we get that far. And here another one of the many parts that we've got to take the bearings out of before sending off for shot blasting. This is the expansion link bracket for the valve gear. Here we see the rear pony truck suspension casting. If we flip it up the other way around on the drawing, you can see the orientation that you'll see it in real life. There's a pin straight up the centre, which is a separate steel part, and as you can see it's worn beyond any kind of sensible repair, so that will need to be bored out because it was solidly rusted in there, as you'll see in a moment. we'll replace it with a new one. The casting itself's really scruffy, as you can see, but it's only cosmetic. It's solid and structurally sound, so we'll fill all the little holes, we'll prime it, and we'll paint it, and it'll look as good as new. The pin itself, though, to remove, we had to put it in the big lathe and bore straight up the centre from the back. We did that so far through until it actually came loose, and we managed to get it out. It came loose with the washer, as you can see here. If we pick up the pin itself, you'll see it's now hollow, and that's just scrap. A new pin will be made to put in there to make it work again. The actual lever bar as well, I'm not sure what you'd actually call it, but the cantilever bar that goes across that allows pivoting on these bearings, that as it goes round a corner increases the load on the pony truck. The bearings themselves were really stuck on. We managed to get it off the frame, but we couldn't get the bearings off the brackets, off the bar. With a bit of heat and the 12-ton press, we managed to press them off, and that's what's going on here. Yep. Nice. So that's the bearing housing here, and the lever bar itself ready for sending off for shot blasting. Almost. We've still got to get the bronze bush off the end of the bar, which Dave's doing here with a bit of brute force. Still smoking, because again we had to use a bit of heat to get that off as well. This one was interesting. This is the crosshead, piston rod, piston and front cylinder cover, which were all together in one unit. Now, we didn't have a big enough press to get these off, so we had to go and buy another press and refurbish it to get us up to 30 tons, because the 12 tons wasn't enough. When it went with a bang. But it went, and nothing got broken, so it was very good news. The piston itself was very similar to that, and it's a cast iron piston, so that was a scary moment. But once this was off like that, we could spin it over, and this is the the cylinder rod being pushed out from the rear cylinder cover, which again is a casting, so we have to be a little bit careful. Straight into the next bit. Again, a bit of a scatty video, I'm afraid, accumulating all the bits that we've been doing over the past God knows how many months. This is the brake rigging all coming apart. The usual process of heat and hammers. Once it's all apart, we can send it all off in one big lot for shot blasting, and we'll have a whole pile of nice new bits ready to be rebushed and fitted back on the locomotives. That was a brake hanger. This is the brake hanger bracket with its pin and its boss on the end, trying to get the brake hanger off the brake hammer bracket. You can see the telltale signs of that having been hot, to expand it and make it big enough to come off gently, and with a little bit of wiggling it'll come off. Now obviously, for the purposes of the video, we've left out loads of bits, but once they'd all been done, all off for shot blasting and then primed, this is what you see here. This is a bunch of parts, only about half the parts that we did, all freshly primed after being shot blasted down to bare metal. So quite pleasing to see at this point. This is where it starts to get nice. We're getting rid of all the rust. This is the smoke box store ring and the smoke box store. There was the bar. This is the regulator on the left hand side. Moving through, you can see the pieces that you saw earlier being taken off. There's the top of the cab, and if we look closely at the top of the cab in the daylight, you can see when you saw it earlier being chopped, and this is how it comes out. So it's amazing what you can do with a shot blaster and a bit of paint. I thought to round up this video, we'd lay all the parts out and walk you through, so you can see what we've got here. This is the brake parts, and you can see the brake lever there. It's missing half its handle, but that's what that part is. This is the steam brake cylinder there, and you can see other brake parts. We're still on a brake part section there. Some of the parts you saw being removed earlier. This is some bits that go around the cab. You can see the beading parts that you saw earlier, the handrails there. There's the reversing rod, which we've cleaned up and polished, and including the reversing quadrant that you can see there, that bolts to the side of the tanks, the cab footsteps in maroon. Then this is the valve gear. You can see the connecting rods, the coupling rods and other parts. This is the regulator valve casting and the safety valves, as well as other parts, the manifold for taking the steam takeoff. And then we have the long white rod is the reach rod for the reverser, the red one is the drain cocks, and then we've got the way shaft with the lifting arms for lifting the valve gear into forward and reverse. And then this is more valve gear parts and the cylinder covers that you saw us cleaning up earlier. There's some little brass parts on the left there. You can see we've located a Fowler whistle, an original one, gauge glass fittings, the regulator quadrant, the blowdown valve that you saw from an earlier video, as well as the chimney base and other parts. The casting on the left here is the casting for the rear pony truck that has a fractured bit missing out of it. We've got the part, we need to weld it back on again. You also saw the A-frame there for the pony truck. These are the two equalising beams that you saw earlier with the number 5 on them having been cleaned up, and the suspension hangers, and a load of painted fire bars there, which was obviously a mistake. It'll be fun burning that off. Onto the next pallet you can see the equalising tubes for the water tanks that take the water from one side to the other of the tanks, and the sanding pipes, which we probably won't end up reusing. Smokebox door and the smokebox front ring, we're reusing the ring, but the door will be put on the shelf and a new one will be made to the original pattern, because that's something that was probably made at Tully Sugar Mills. Here's the cab parts. Again, these are the original parts that we're going to be reusing, and they'll be grafted to new material to make up for the bits that was beyond sensible or economic repair. There you go. Thanks ever so much for watching. There'll be another video along shortly because we've still got loads of things to show you.